To find out why the Sam Davis home is still here in the 21st century, we have to look back to the 19th century.
The heart of the Sam Davis home exists not in the beautiful historic home and grounds, but in the memory of the life and death of his famous son. Charles and Jane Davis of Smyrna welcomed their first child, Sam, into the world on October 6, 1842. He joined the Confederate Army at the age of 18 early in the war between the states. Due to his loyalty, integrity, and knowledge of Middle Tennessee, his commanding officer handpicked him to serve with the elite Coleman Scouts. His new commander, H.B. Shaw, or E. Coleman, relied on young men familiar with the Middle Tennessee area to move information across enemy lines and into the hands of Confederate leaders. The success of Coleman Scouts created imminent danger for the men as the Union troops tried to capture as many of their members as possible. In the midst of this dangerous climate, young Sam Davis left on the mission from which he would not return in November of 1863.
This window on the back porch of the Sam Davis home figures prominently into the story of Sam Davis. In mid-November of 1863, Sam was in this area doing scouting duty when he decided to stop in for a few moments to see his family. This area was behind Union lines, and it made a visit home extremely dangerous, as this was the home of 2 scouts and was watched by the Union troops. But Sam chanced it, and he came in the middle of the night, and his mother raised the window so that he could slip inside without them raising suspicion by opening the door in the middle of the night. And he came in and he spent a few hours with his family. He ate supper, his father repaired his boots, and his mother gave him a Federal overcoat that she had dyed with walnut hulls. He slept a few hours by the fire, kissed his sleeping baby brothers goodbye, and then slipped back out into the night. And it was the last visit he made home. He was captured 3 days later.
He left the Nashville area headed south with papers for General Braxton Bragg, stationed in Chattanooga. As he neared Miner Hill, near the Alabama state line, Union cavalrymen dressed as Confederate soldiers stopped Davis. After dismounting their horses, the men held him at gunpoint and conducted a search for information. They found papers hidden in his boots and saddlebags. The Union soldiers took him to Pulaski, Tennessee, to their commanding officer, General Grenville M. Dodge. After seeing Davis's information, Dodge knew the papers came from his desk. Desperate to find the traitor, Dodge decided to try Sam as a spy in hopes that he would give up his source. Dodge was wrong. Despite a guilty verdict and a sentence of death by hanging, 21-year-old Davis stayed true to his source. Dodge, impressed by Sam's forthrightness and honor, offered him one last chance to free himself if he would just reveal Dodge's spy. Sam, facing certain death, unwittingly uttered his own epitaph with his immortal answer: "If I had 1,000 lives to live, I would give them all rather than betray a friend." The hangman then placed the noose around the soldier's neck, and Sam Davis's life ended.
Most historians agree that General Dodge had no intention of actually hanging Sam Davis. His main intention was to find out who the spy on his staff was. The information that Sam was carrying was very detailed and could only have come from his desk. He believed that Sam was young and impressionable and could have been easily intimidated with the thought of death, but he underestimated Davis's character. He tried everything he could to get Sam to tell, including putting spies in his cell, but Sam never gave up any information, and Dodge was eventually forced to hang him despite of his personal preference. This monument was placed by Sam's father and the Coleman Scouts in 1866. After the Civil War, the story of Sam Davis spread through the Union troops until eventually it was known all over the world. Then it sort of faded away until 1895, when a man named S.A. Cunningham heard his story at a speech in Nashville. Cunningham was the editor of the Confederate Veteran magazine, and he became enamored with the story of Sam Davis and printed everything he could get on the story. And as he did, he started a fund for a permanent memorial to Sam Davis, which now stands at the Tennessee State Capitol. But perhaps the most lasting effect of Cunningham's ardor over Sam Davis is the Sam Davis home. It was purchased from the Davis family by the state of Tennessee in 1927 and has been open for tours since 1930.
The Sam Davis home, built along the banks of Stewart's Creek in 1820, rests on 168 acres of farmland. The two-story Greek Revival home reflects the Davis' status as an upper-middle-class farm family in Tennessee.
Well, we're sitting on the back porch of the Sam Davis home. This is basically a Tennessee vernacular house, federal style, which means very plain, simple, symmetrical. Original house would not have looked this way. The original house was a log structure, double pin, two-story log structure, probably made of yellow poplar logs. This house was at some point, sheathed in these clapboards that you will point out in a moment. For two reasons, actually. One, to show that you could afford to do that, so it was a symbol of rising expectations. And the other was to protect those logs from rotting. The front of the house then is a different style from the back of the house, because by the 1840s, the Greek Revival form of architecture, the style was more popular. So when he built the addition, he built it in the Greek Revival style. And on the front you see the porch with the tall columns and the pediment on the top, which would have been very Greek looking. The inner millwork represents that as well. You see federal style in the front part of the house, Greek Revival in the back part of the house. As you come in the front doors of the house, the first room on the right is the formal parlor, which would indicate wealth, because most houses would not have had a room dedicated to just one use. But this room would be set aside for special occasions, parties, weddings, and funerals. And of course, Sam's funeral was in this room, Christmas Eve, 1863. You have Brussels carpet on the floor, which would be rare for that day and period. Horsehair furniture, finished in horsehair to make it last forever. And that took money. So Mr. Davis was a prosperous, upper middle class farmer in Middle Tennessee. This room would have been used for formal entertaining. So when guests would come by, they would open that room up. There's a piano in there, for example. And of course, back then, again, the way you entertained was to entertain yourself. There was no television, video games. So you did your own entertaining. So everybody played musical instruments. Chess set in this room. And so things that people did with one another rather than do by themselves primarily. Going into the addition, the 1847 addition, the first room you come to there is what we would call the family room. It's actually the parents' bedroom, where most of the living went on in that day. The children lived in there with the parents until they were 5 or 6 years old. There's a plantation desk in there where he would have done his plantation business. That piece of furniture probably made on this farm by slave craftsmen. The bed, the chest of drawers, pieces that they probably brought with them, or he would have with his first wife, from Mecklenburg County, Virginia. There's a cradle in there that would have rocked most of the Davis children, which is original. Upstairs above that room is the grandmother's room, because the grandmother came with the package. And that would have been where most of the schooling for the girls took place, because the girls didn't go to school. And they were taught to knit and sew and do their letters, play musical instruments. And she was the school marm for the girls here on this farm. There's a sewing machine in that room that dates back to 1855. Most people don't know we had sewing machines, but that would have been a mechanical sewing machine that would have made that job much easier. And some furniture in that room that would be original to the house. The bed there with the coverlet that the mother-in-law would have made during those years. The girls and the boys lived in different quarters in this house, and they were separated by walls, not doors. So the girls were separated from the boys, and you had to come downstairs and across a hall to get from the girls' quarters to the boys' quarters, and you had to go past Grandma's room or past Mom's room. So they kept check on the young people in those days, much more than they did today. The dining room is located in this new wing as well. Of course, the kitchen outside the house, but the dining room was another indication of upper middle class, because what you find in that dining room is utensils that cost money. There are salt cellars, for example, individual servings on the table. There were storage spaces. Their closets in that room would have been storage spaces for linens and dishes. There are some original dishes in the corner cupboard in that room, and there's a sugar chest. We're out on the veranda, which was an 1840s addition, and the veranda contains several evidences not only of affluence but of economy, because people back then, they didn't have the technology we have, but they knew how to do things. For example, the hand railing here that runs along the entire length and width of this porch is round. That lets the rainwater run off, and these are original, which means they've lasted for all these years. The clapboarding on the side of this house is different on the L than it is on the main portion of the house. And you'll notice what we call lapstrake or overlapping boards on the original portion, because it was originally exposed to the elements. That allows the rain to run off without rotting the wood. On the newer section, which is covered, and of course they knew it was going to be covered, they put in flush weatherboarding because it wasn't going to be exposed to the elements, and that saves a little lumber. So you've got not only weatherboarding to indicate wealth, but you've got evidence of economy as well. The ceiling of this veranda probably would have been painted blue if you'd arrived here in 1850. And the reason for that was birds tend to come and roost under these porches. And if you paint the ceiling blue, the bird thinks it's the sky, and he doesn't want to build his house exposed to the sky. This was living space in the 1850s. In the summertime, this would be the coolest place in the house. The house is oriented to the sun. People knew that you built your house depending on the direction. So this house faces south. So in the wintertime it's warm, in the summertime it's cool. The porch is always on the east. So the morning sun catches it. By afternoon you're in the cool of the shade. So they could use this space in ways that we don't really use it. These shutters are interesting. You notice shutter dogs, the little iron pieces to keep them up against the wall when they're not in use. Window screens had not been invented. So if you left your windows open at night, or in the daytime for that matter, but more at night, all sorts of creatures would come through your house. So you would close these shutters to allow the air to get through, but not all the wilderness critters that were roaming around. And when the shutter is closed, the louver slopes down. So the rainwater is shed from the shutter, so it doesn't rain in. When the window shutters are open, you'll notice that's reversed, really upside down. Notice on the back of the porch there's a set of washware where when you're coming into the dining room to eat, you wash your hands right on the porch, and that's original. That's what Sam wiped his hands on I don't think the cloth is original, but everything else is. And so they washed before they went in to eat. This house had no indoor plumbing. People didn't have water inside the house for any use. So you needed to save water. And when it would rain, the water would come down the drain pipes off the roof through a filter that you see at the base of the porch. That would let the first few gallons run on through, so your twigs and sticks and bird feathers would pass on through, and then it would close. And that would filter the water then into this cistern, which would hold many hundreds of gallons. And then they would have water for use without using their well water. This would be soft water for washing, what have you. So this is an integral part of the water system for a house like this. Other buildings on this property indicate other levels. The boyhood home out on the road coming in would have been more of a lower middle class structure. The log building that now serves as the gift shop would be more like a sharecropper's or tenant farmer's structure. Of course, the slave cabins would indicate the lowest economic class in those days. So we have a collection of buildings that indicate different socioeconomic levels.
The cabins behind me are period slave quarters that have been brought in from different areas. The first one is the Dog Trot, and that was found here in Rutherford County. The three cabins along the way are from the Rattle and Snap Plantation in Columbia, Tennessee. According to the 1860 census, Mr. Davis owned approximately 830 acres of land, 51 slaves, and 14 slave quarters. Because Mr. Davis didn't own as much land or slaves, this family was considered an upper middle class family. This is the overseer's cabin. This would have been used as an office for the overseer. Your overseer was always a white male, earned about $550 a year. His job would have been mainly to decide when to plant and harvest the crops, give job assignments, and also would check the equipment such as the tools, harness, and plows. This is the courtyard. This would have been used as a large working area. The bricks back here are original. The buildings behind me were built after Mr. Davis bought the home in 1848. The kitchen was built in 1848. The dinner bell beside it, if you ring it, you should hear it at a 3-mile radius. We have the smokehouse that will hold up to 3,000 pounds of meat. Mr. Davis owned approximately 250 hogs. Usually you would only slaughter about 150. The outhouse behind me is a 3-holer outhouse, and that would have actually been found out towards the back. So it wouldn't have been located this close to the kitchen.
In accordance with the mission of the Sam Davis Home Memorial Association, the Sam Davis Home Education Department hosts over 7,000 school children a year in on-site and outreach programs. The outreach programs were started in 1999 as a way to bring hands-on history to schools that could not come to the Sam Davis home. Our most popular on-site programs include Days on the Farm, held the first full week in May, Apple Valley School Day Camp, and Heritage Days, held Thursday and Friday closest to Sam's birthday on October 6th. Holiday events are also special at the Sam Davis home. Our Christmas tours are open to the public from the day after Thanksgiving until December 31st with a new theme each year. The Sam Davis home also sponsors the Heritage Christmas Tour of Homes on the first Saturday in December. We are open for tours 7 days a week all year round, so anytime is a good time to come hear the story of Sam Davis and his family.